everybody, welcome to the Global Challenge. Today we're going to attempt to write a modular computer program without using any global variables. The scenario is a free diver catches fish. It's going to make 10 dives, and at the start of each dive, the diver has no fish and 100% air in his lungs. While he's got air in his lungs, more than 20%, the diver attempts to catch fish. And when the air supply is 20% or less, the diver returns to the boat, displays the catch data, and dives again. Okay? Because he's going to make 10 dives on the trip. So, let's start a modular solution to this problem. The first module that I'm going to call is the dive trip module. And let's start to design that module. Public static void dive trip. Now remember, on a dive trip, the diver is going to make 10 dives. So let's just use a for loop to help us do that. And at the start of each dive, so this is really the start of the next dive. Each time we come into this for loop, we're starting a new dive. At the start of a new dive, the diver has no fish, and the air supply is 100%. Okay. Now we're not allowed to use global variables, so I'm going to declare these two variables as local variables in the dive trip function. Okay. So they're both integers. So let's just put it all on one line of code. It should be okay. We've declared two variables, and now we're using them within the function. Now, while air supply is greater than 20, we're going to attempt to catch fish. Sometimes we're going to fail, and sometimes we're going to succeed. But I'm going to design a function to help me attempt to catch fish. In fact, let's come out of the dive trip function for a minute, and let's start to think about the catch fish attempt function. Catch fish attempt. Now, sometimes we're going to catch a fish, and sometimes we're going to fail to catch a fish. Okay, so I'm going to create a Boolean variable here. I'm going to call it caught. I'm also going to be using a random number generator to help me kind of simulate some randomness here. Let's just use math.random. Let's create a number between 0 and 10. Doesn't matter what that range is. Now, if rand, our random number, modulus 2 is the same as 0, we're going to suggest that we caught a fish. Else, we're going to suggest that we failed in our attempt to catch a fish. Now, if you're not sure about this line of code here, we're using the modulus operator. We're taking a number, mod 2, and comparing that result with 0. That will tell us if the number is even or odd. If you're not sure about that, go and do some research on the modulus operator in Java. So that's the design of my catch fish attempt function. We're just going to simulate randomly catching or not catching a fish. So once we've called the catch fish attempt function, we now need to see if we caught a fish, and if we did, we're going to update total fish. We're going to add 1 to that variable. Oh no, I've just seen a problem. The dive trip function needs to know the data stored in this caught variable, right? Because this variable is telling us if we caught the fish or not. So this variable is needed by two functions, the catch fish attempt function and the dive trip function. So we need to make it global. But in this global challenge, we're not allowed global variables. How can the catch fish attempt function tell the dive trip function the value of that variable without it being global? This is what we can do. Before we finish the catch fish attempt function, we're going to return the data stored in the caught variable. Okay, so let me try and explain how this works. We call the catch fish attempt function. That's when we jump to the function. We execute the function code, and the last thing that happens is the data stored in this caught function is returned back to where we called the function. And that data, true or false, is going to replace the function call. It's going to be true or it's going to be false. But whatever it is, it replaces the function call. Okay, I'm just going to say that again. We call the function, bing. We execute the function code, and the last thing we do is return back to the call. We return the data that we want to return. In this case, it's going to be true or false. Okay? So now that we've returned some data, well, we need to do something with it. We need to grab it in a variable. Now, this is the first time that Java has seen this variable, so we also need to declare it in the function. I'm going to declare it as a Boolean, because it's grabbing a Boolean. Okay? Now remember, what we were doing here was calling a function, catch fish attempt. We call the function, we jump to the function, we let the function execute its code, and the last thing it's doing is returning some data, true or false. So we return back to the calling zone here, and it is replaced with whatever data it returned. And we're grabbing it, now we can process it. So let's process the data that was returned. If result is true. Now remember, result is just a Boolean. So we can just simplify that to just saying if result. Okay. We're going to update total fish. Yay, okay. Now we do have an error here. Let's go and see if we can find out what the error is. Void methods cannot return a value. Well, method is just another word for a function. So void functions cannot return a value. Catch fish attempt is a void function. But we want it to return a Boolean. Caught is Boolean. So I want to replace this void keyword with Boolean. This keyword tells us the data type of the data that's being returned by the function. So catch fish attempt now returns a Boolean. Okay? So we're going to grab some data from catch fish attempt. It's going to be true or false. And then we're going to process that data. So have a think about that. See if you can understand what's going on there. Before we finish this video tutorial, I'm just going to present to you another idea. After we attempt to catch a fish, we also need to reduce the air supply. So this is how I'm going to do it. Okay. I'm going to call a function called air supply. I'm going to send it as a parameter, the current air supply, and it's going to return the new air supply. Okay? So let's take a quick look at how we can do that. This function, reduce air supply, is going to return an integer. Reduce air supply. And the parameter, air supply, is an integer. Now I'm just going to call it air. Doesn't matter what you call it. This is just a parameter. But when we call the function, this data is going to be stored in this parameter. Okay? Now again, I'm just going to create another random number. And let's say let's just do the same again, between 0 and 10. And I'm going to create another variable, new air supply. So the new air supply is going to be equal to this thing here, which represents the current air supply. That's the current air supply. Take away this random number that I just generated. So I've just reduced the air supply, and I'm going to return the new air supply. And that is going to update. That's going to be assigned to air supply. So I'm updating air supply with this little trick here. Can you see how that works? Give the function the current air supply, so that's grabbed here. Generate a random number. Take that random number away from the current air supply, that's what that is, and assign it to another variable. I've called it new air supply, and that's what we're returning. So if this is 100, and let's say this results in 90, let's say that becomes 90. So new air supply is 90. We are returning 90. And that becomes the new air supply. Take a moment to think about how that works. Okay. Now, at the end of the dive, we do system.out.println total fish. And then we start the new dive. What I'm also going to do, before we finish here, if I've got time, I'm just going to do a system.out.print to show us what's happening with that air supply. Just so we can see what's going on. Okay. System.out.print, I've got my plus in the wrong place. So in the while loop, while we're diving, let's monitor the air supply. And when we've finished each dive, let's see how many fish we caught. So let's run this very quickly and see if the program works as expected. There you go. So for each dive, we start again. We try to catch fish as we lose our air. Finally, we have to come to the surface. And on that dive, I caught 9 fish. Next dive, we start again. Until we run out of air. This time I only caught 7 fish. So take a moment, guys, to think about the program that we've just written. We have completed the global challenge. We've written a modular program with no global variables.